Hello and welcome to Bloke on the Range. Now this here is the chap's very own Sturmgewehr 57. It is not a PE 57. This one used to be rock and roll, but it isn't anymore. These things go in Switzerland, just to make you jealous, for a reasonable one, 400 francs, which is about $400, 450. The private ones, the PE 57s, go for an awful lot more just because they say PE 57 on them, pretty much. Otherwise, the same rifle. Now, this is a joint effort video, so we're going to start with me here on the range. Now, for those who are not aware of the Sturmgewehr 57, this was introduced into Swiss service in 1960. The Swiss designation numbers tend to be earlier because they're normally a design date, and they cost a ridiculous amount of money at the time. And once I did the calculation based on inflation, and it came out at like 30,000 of today's dollars each. I mean, they're ridiculous. But the Swiss saw marksmanship and that sort of thing as a force multiplier in case of invasion by the Russians at that stage. So they thought it was worth it. So anyway, it is heavy. It has a very typically Swiss nasty floppy bipod that is very long. So it has a 24 round magazine. Remember, Swiss ammunition came in 6s at the time, so 6 4s are 24. That's 7.5 per 55 GP11 ammunition. Magazine rocks in like an AK, like that. And one of the reasons why the nasty floppy bipod is long is to enable the magazine to clear the ground and still be able to shoot up. And it also allegedly helps shooting up and down hills. Nice rubber butt pad. We have a very, very much FG42 style rear sight drum. You'd think that they studied the FG42 and adopted the things they liked of it. K31 style cocking handle, and there is no hold open at all. There's some funky stuff going on in there which we'll get to in a minute. Carry handle nicely at the point of balance. A very silly hand grip that's too small and in the wrong place, at least for me. Moving forward, we have a front sight which is again quite FG42 style. It's up like that. We've got a night sight on the top of it, and the nasty floppy bipod can be moved along the barrel jacket, and the barrel jacket is attached to the receiver and to the barrel. If we get the camera in there, you can see that it's not a free float. Modern target ones have free floats. Let us just press this release button here, and then we can move Mr. Nasty and Floppy all the way to the front, where he applies a different force on the barrel, and the manual tells you how many clicks you need to adjust your range drum here to compensate from the fact that it's down there. Right at the front here we have it's set up to launch rifle grenades. And then this here is a combined flash hider and muzzle brake, which means that on a range where you've got no partitions, it can be quite unpleasant to shoot next to someone who's firing one of these, because inside here there's a cone that directs gas backwards out the flash suppressor ports. Bayonet mount there, and the bipod legs are scaled. They have scales from 40 to 140 meters on that side, and 100 to 400 meters on that side. And what this is for is when Mr. Floppy here is in the backmost position, depending on what type of grenade it is, you've got the two range scales, you've got a plumb line that you hang off here, and you look at where the plumb line lines up with that, name your grenade, and boom! The Swiss, like the French, were very, very big on rifle grenades, simply because it gave everybody anti-tank capability.
Infanterie muss nun ihren Angriff zu Fuß weiterführen. Weil sie in einem eng begrenzten Gelände kämpft,
or a sort of light mortar capability. I believe I'm right in saying that the first troops to get these were not infantry per se, but they were the anti-tank troops. For that reason. Now, controls-wise on this side, keeping the rifle downrange, we have a selector that is not a thumb lever; it's not reachable. Safe, single shot, Einzelfeuer, M, Mitrailleur, machine gun, and it's heavy enough and controllable enough in full auto fire to be used as a light machine gun. You see it quite a lot in the propaganda movies of the 1960s that they made to show off how funky and powerful the Swiss military would be if you invaded. There's quite a lot of giving it lots in rock and roll. Basically, it's a heavy. It's not an assault rifle so much as a defensive rifle. It's very heavy, and it seems really suited to be carried up into a defensive position, put in place, and you shoot until you run out of ammo. And I suspect that in reality, okay, the Swiss in planes and aircraft were never going to be a match, but at least infantry, when the opposition got to within 300 meters, they would probably start dropping them pretty rapidly, because most of the practice is done at 300 meters. Now, a bit of mechanics. It is a roller delayed blowback with a fluted chamber, and there's something very interesting going on in the chamber, and we can't see what is going on in the chamber, so we shall have to see its effect on a cartridge. So I shall load a single cartridge. And for point of reference, that is a normal cartridge. There's no funny business going on. It's not a trick cartridge. Okay, first thing you'll notice, that has popped up. That is a loaded chamber indicator. See, this is kind of a substitute for having a bolt hold open. All that is a pin with a rounded end that goes into the chamber, and when there's a cartridge in, that pops up, so you can immediately see and feel, more importantly, whether there's a cartridge in the chamber. And then if I eject it, he says, as he fails, so check, we're clear. It's dropped back in. Now if I just clean that off, you can see that it's made an impact on the shoulder of the case. Now, it is often misreported that there's a groove in the chamber into which the cartridge expands on firing. However, it is more so the case that there's a narrow bit which catches it, and what that is supposed to do, whether it really does it or not, is to break. It's sort of an anti-bounce device for full auto fire, and I believe this is a copy from the FG42, supposedly to take some of the energy out of the bolt so that it doesn't bounce so badly. And when it comes out, you'll see the shape of that. Once the case is expanded to fit the chamber intimately, you'll see the full form of that. So let's stick up a fresh target and put a couple of rounds through it quickly. Right, so I'm going to put 6 rounds because Swiss guns work in 6s, not in 5s, with the bipod at the rearmost position, which is the most common position, and for a while, if I remember rightly, soldiers were obliged to use the rearmost position for the Feldschießen and the Obligatorisch. But, not sure about that. So, semi. Oh yes, I should have mentioned winter trigger. They're very heavy triggers on these, so people tend to use the winter trigger. very, very soft shooting because it's very heavy and it's got that muzzle brake, and plus a big rubber pad at the back. Also, being a delayed blowback, it blows gas back in your face. Ugh. Okay, magazine off, safe. It's clear. Oh, don't look, don't look. Well, aside from that one fly, that's pretty good. I think it's yeah, it is. They're pretty accurate rifles for a battle rifle of this era. Anyway, I have just got this dirty, so Herr Chap will take it back to the workshop, take it apart, and show you how it works on the inside.
Hello and welcome back in the workshop. We're back again with my Sturmgewehr 57, now that the bloke has had his way with it. It's filthy, it's not entirely his fault, I must admit. I haven't cleaned it for the last 150 odd rounds, which is about a year since I mostly shoot with the bolt actions. So I'm going to tear it down. You can also see a bit how it works. Ian from Forgotten Weapons has already done a good talk on it, but maybe you can see some new things in there. This was issued with a cleaning kit, which we'll go through in a sec. So I'll be using this kit for cleaning and nothing else. And it also came with a nice little service booklet. This one's a French edition, but I think there is an English translation of it online somewhere. And in here it describes the function, maintenance requirements, the expected shooting positions, lots of details on rifle grenade use, etc. Very good read. But with regard to maintenance, there are basically two types. Firstly, daily maintenance in service if you've been out shooting. Then there's a more thorough service which is recommended if you've been out shooting in damp conditions, so if it's been soaked in water, etc. And as standard every 3 weeks. And at the end of your service stint, so if it's been over 3 weeks, then you still do another full service at the end of that before you put it back in the cupboard. So what I'm going to do is a bit of both. I'm going to go a little further than the daily shooting service, but not quite the full disassembly that's required for the 3 week teardown. I mean, it's things that aren't really important. Disassembling the recoil, spring assembly and the stock, removing bell shroud, not really very important. So, before we do that, we'll just go through what's in here. So, what have we got in this little pack? Well, nothing out of the ordinary really. We have 2 tubs of almost mythical Automaton Fett. Comes with a little built-in brush. And then we have a rod handle, a little bore mirror. And then we have a chamber bronze brush and the chamber jag. Then we have a barrel, bronze brush, and barrel nylon greasing brush. A number of rod extensions, and at the end we have a rotating jag tip with a thread on the end for the brush. So in all, pretty basic, and we'll see how we go. Now the manual is very helpful. In every stage it even tells you what bits to use and how many rod extensions you need to fit together so that you can reach all the areas you need to. Now notice that the rod extensions have this brass connection bit so that only brass comes in contact with the rifling and no steel. Right, so the next step is to tear down the rifle as far as we need to go. Right, so before we get started, need to do a basic breakdown of the rifle. So, first things first, empty, lift it off, schlock, get rid of the sights, get rid of the sling, buttstock, don't need that, so there's a handy little button there, turn it clockwise. Now comes the recoil spring and guide. We'll need this bit for further disassembly in a second. Then we need to remove the bolt, back to the rear, cocking handle, and a very, very dirty bolt. I'm wearing my most least sensitive clothing because cleaning this involves a lot of grease and a lot of yuck. Right, and then the lower, that's just got one very normal push pin, which you just keep captive in there. With regards to the trigger mech, they just say, you know, wipe it out with a cloth and reapply grease. There's no real deep clean to be done. If it really needs to be done, then it goes back to the armourer. Right, and then basically this stays as it is. To remove the shroud, you need to take off the plastic handguard, and then it just slides off. So, one important thing about cleaning the receiver is getting the loaded cartridge indicator out of the way. There's a little peg inside which protrudes into the opening of the chamber, and when a round goes in, it causes the thing to pop up. And that means when you're trying to clean and brush and things, you've got this little peg that's sticking in the middle of the, well, a little bit into the chamber. So protocol was to poke it up and use the night sight device and jam the indicator in the upward position. Night sight looks like that, and the fork there slips underneath the cartridge indicator. I don't have one, but I discovered that a simple ring pull with a notch cut out works just as well. So you need to see the light, poke it up, and there's two little notches underneath, and there we go. That means the chamber is now fully accessible. And one thing you'll find in any shooting range, Swiss shooting range, is this, known as a putzbock or putzböckli. You will usually have two of these, either on the range or in a little room next to it. A selection of long brushes and some little cleaning patches and a large tub of Automatenfett, and that's it. So these basically allow you to mount the uppers and barrel of Sturmgewehr 57 or Sturmgewehr 90, simply by using the hinge of the rifle and some kind of clamp for the barrel, and then it's held firmly, and you can shove patches through and brush to your heart's content without having to hold anything. So this is my take on the thing. So this is as far as we need to go for disassembly. Next step will be obviously to brush the bore, chamber and the receiver. Now the bolt also needs further disassembly, and there's two things you need to do here. Firstly is separate the actual bolt head from the rear camming block. You can see that if I hold it like this and the block is out, the rollers can go in, then the bolt is free to travel, and then once it's forward, the rollers are locked forward and the bolt is locked. This section, there's no further disassembly. You need to inspect the rollers, and if anything's untoward then you need to go to the armourer. So there's no disassembling this horrible ejector contraption here, which you'll see when it goes back in the receiver kicks sideways and basically kicks the empty case out base first. It spins out, which is a little unusual, with a lot of force. Anyway, you need to separate the two parts, and for that it's recommended you basically need to push out this pin here, and for that it's recommended to use the end of the recoil assembly. Just poke it in, pin comes out the other end, and there's the two parts. That's the firing pin, and there's then a further step, which is removing the striker, which is actually mounted crossways here, and the hammer strikes it on this side. So that we need to get out so you can get to the firing pin and clean in and around there. The manual says use the punch to push this pin out, and I had no idea what they were talking about, because there's no punch in the cleaning kit. I mean, has there been some mistake? And then I finally remembered that what does a Swiss soldier always have on person? Of course, a Swiss Army knife. Not this one, but... And on the Swiss Army knife, there is always a punch, like this. And this is obviously what they were referring to. So, on the underside of the camming block, there's a little hole here, and you poke that through, and out pops the pin. There. And there goes that. Now it's still under tension because there's the firing pin spring in there between firing pin and the hammer. So for relieving that, you can pull the cocking lever out, just keeping it towards you. Yeah. And you just got to wriggle it out. There we go. And out pops the firing pin. Quite a delicate firing pin actually when you look at it. So that's all the bits. Now, as you can see, it's horrible. So I'll start with simply degreasing and cleaning the bolt. There's all the elements there. So clean those. That's just done with rags and then copiously re-greased with Automatenfett. and then I shall get to work on the receiver. Right, chamber is now polished until it shines. However, this is the worst thing ever. For one part, the slot here is open at the top, so when you shove the patch in, you try and pull it out again and it stays in the chamber because there's nothing holding it back. And secondly, you can't go in there and turn it clockwise or anti-clockwise to get a nice polish in there because of the chamber flutes that munch the patch. So you just basically from the top you've got to hold the patch in and get it out, but hey, it goes pretty quickly, so not so bad. Right, what I did next was clean out the receiver. There's nothing much to show there. However, I will take you inside the receiver just to show you one thing that's probably really annoying to soldiers back in the day. So, bear with me while I take the camera. Alright, here you can see the locking cups for the rollers, one on each side of the receiver, and it's pushed in from the inside and secured with a circlip. So it was a replaceable part, and that would be replaced obviously at armour level, but it was the soldier's job to pay attention to the condition of it on the inside and keep it regularly lubed. Right, apart from that, the receiver itself is a rectangle, pretty straightforward to clean. Now it looks a mess because I've cleaned it and re-greased it, but I assure you it's clean grease. But you can see in there the loaded chamber indicator, which there we go, which has the a spring and this rod that sticks then into the chamber, and that is a right pain to clean up and around and behind it. So I'm guessing lots of swearing involved when that happened. So now to greasing the bore and chamber. Here it says a minimum of 10 times, 10 passes through the barrel and chamber. So, there goes. Schlop. Now next is the bolt. Now there's two parts, so they'll need to go together. That's an easy case of crosspin going in. But first I need to put in the firing pin and striker, which is a bit of a juggle. So I'm going to do that according to the manual again. And that consists of inserting the firing pin and spring first, then using the cross pin that joins the two parts of the bolt. You poke that in the end against the base of the firing pin and push that as far as it will go, and then you put the hammer in crossways in its slot, and it's going to take over from the cross pin at some point. And you gently ease out the cross pin. There, and the hammer slides into place. Whew. And then you just need the pivot for the hammer, and that just drops right in. And there you can see the hammer striker is in place there. I can imagine there were quite a number of hammers and firing pin assemblies being fired across barrack rooms with that manoeuvre. Right, another note here. Let me see, there, pokey thing. You see this shiny bit here? This has been ground off as part of the castration procedure. You have a curved camming surface here which would interact with the full auto sear, which has sadly been removed from here. So yeah, there's no easy back conversion. Right, so that's together. You can see the rollers are nice and shiny now, although I didn't remove them, it's just external. And yeah, so that pokes in. You get the cross pin. And there we are. Bolt assembly ready to go. But not before greasing, of course. Seems such a shame, all that effort to make it all tidy. And now you're covered in grey grease all over again. But hey, befehl ist befehl. Right, the rifle bits are all cleaned, greased, ready to be put back together. But there's one more section I want to talk about in this here book, and that's section 39. 39 is concerned with combat lubrication. What on earth could that be? Well, some bright spark and obviously desk jockey included a section where on a 2-ray range you should find a convenient pause in the fire and retreat to some quiet location, either at your own free will or under instructions of your superior, or at the maximum after 5 magazines, and whereupon partially disassemble your rifle, take out the breech block, give it a good clean, re-grease, also do the locking recesses while you're at it, reassemble, function check, reload, and carry on. Now that's utterly insane. I even checked with some old Swiss Cold War warriors who had fun with these, and basically the reaction was yeah, it wasn't done at all. The Swiss are big with live fire exercises, and yeah, I was told they would burn through tens of magazines. There was never any functional issues, and cleaning was only exclusively done at barracks. So yeah, this section is fiction. So yeah, even the Swiss have their moments. Right, now let's reassemble. Pretty straightforward. Take it out of its puts buckley. Right, now I can take off the little clip holding the chamber indicator. That's all flush now. So I need the cocking piece, then a very greasy breech block. Yuck. Now for this, it needs to be separated so the camming block behind is extended, so the rollers can be pushed in when you push it into the receiver, and you need to push the ejector inwards towards the centre. Takes quite a bit of force. Right, once it's in, put it all the way in. Then yeah, you have the lower, and that just clips into its 2 sections of the receiver. Lift it up and put in the cross pin. And last but not least is stock and recoil assembly, and that just pushes in and turns to the clips. Lastly, we have the strap. And of course, if you're going out to play, sights. So, a quick function check. She goes. Right, so I think I'm just about ready now. Time to go chase Mr. Bond through the forests. Mwah!